Next up for our 65 Chevelle was the installation of a rear disc brake setup we got from OPGI. So the first step in this conversion was to take the center section cover off and drain the fluid. Because we're in the middle of a restoration, we didn't really have any fluid in this rear axle, but that's what you would do. And this is a 10-bolt rear axle which uses C-clips to hold the axles in place. And the axles have to come out. And you take them out by loosening up the pin in the center of the rear axle assembly and rotating the spider gears around and pulling the C-clips out. Once those C-clips are removed, you can simply slide the axles out of the axle housing. Next, you can disconnect the rear brake lines from the rear wheel cylinders. Once you get those lines disconnected, the rear backing plates can come off. It's just a few bolts and those will pop right off. Disc brakes will add a little bit of overall width to your rear axle because of the thickness of the rotor. So you have to press in some new longer wheel studs in the rear axles. And this OPGI kit comes with those. So it doesn't take very long to pound out the original studs and then to press in or tap in the new ones. We kind of jumped the gun a little bit when we put the axles back in because we put the caliper brackets on the front side of the axle housing, and that's not where they're going to go. We're going to change that in a sec. But to finish the job of putting the axles back in, you just kind of do the reverse. You slide them back in the tubes and then put the spider gears and the C-clips back together and reinstall the retaining bolt and get that tightened down, and then you can close up the center section, put the cover back on. The correct position for the caliper brackets is on the back side of the axle for this car. The calipers have integrated emergency brake hardware built into them, and for the bracketry to sit right and the emergency brake cables to pull properly and to have the bleeders at the top of the calipers, which is where you want them, they had to be positioned to the rear of the axle housing. The brackets are pretty beefy, high-tech cut, either water jet or laser cut. They're real clean, gold anodized. And they assemble pretty easily. OPGI includes the T-bolts and the lock nuts to put that together. And once you get the caliper brackets on, you can put the rotors on and then slip the calipers on and check and see if they are installed properly, which really isn't very difficult. The only thing you want to look out for is if the rotor is centered, between the pads on the caliper, and you can use adjusting shims to space that either direction, but I don't think we really had to do much in our case. The OPGI kit actually comes with new pre-bent brake lines, which was pretty cool. They're shorter because the caliper has a hose that connects from it to the hard line on the rear axle. So switching those out is pretty simple. We went ahead and welded some tabs on the rear axle where the hose connects to the hard line. But they come with clamps, so you can just clamp those on if you don't have access to a welder. The last piece of hardware is the combination valve, which, as its title suggests, does a couple things. First, it's a safety device. If you lose pressure, like you get a leak in your hydraulic system in either the fronts or the rears, the combination valve inside there, the safety valve will slide and either isolate the rear brakes or the fronts, so you can still stop. The other thing it does is it provides a proportioning valve to make sure the brake bias is correct from front to rear. To wrap this project up, we powder coated our master cylinder, and coupled with all the new brake lines, our brake system is entirely new, nice and clean. So all that's left is to bleed the brakes, and when that's done, we should have a Chevelle that stops really, really well with nice repeatability and minimal brake fade.